one says it's going to be easy, because I think at the end, we know that people that are still at the top levels of that government are people that adhere to the same theology and the same mentality as the people that have led it in the past. They've got some people in the political branches that seem more flexible or more willing to work with us. Those are the ones we're negotiating with. We'll see how it works out.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the one and the only Awakener podcast. Welcome once again to another episode. I'm really glad to be here today. Had a busy week, lots of things happen in the world, and I'm just here to kind of vent. Now, for those of you who have listened to me for a long time, I want to thank you once again for listening, obviously subscribing to my show and telling people about it. Operating this podcast has been a very difficult adventure, as you might know. Some of my long-term listeners who began listening to me 8 years ago, you remember when I had 10,000 followers and 10,000 listeners, and how this was all kind of quashed. It was quashed because I was following a bunch of things that were happening, especially this person that I came and talked about who was posting online all these kind of things that were happening inside the US government. And everybody kind of got into it at the time, and it was a big thing to follow. And then when Trump lost that election in 2020, everybody went, wait a second, this is fake, this is not real. And I kind of took a very, very different path, which means I was kind of like, hey, I'm not quite sure that this is not fake yet. There's still some validity to it. And I've kind of went on that direction. And so because this has happened and because this online intelligence poster has been kind of banned across the world, I obviously lost my 10,000 followers. Spotify shut me down. Yeah, censorship galore. So here we are, and I kind of been trying to put this back together again, and we have a much more limited followership. My listeners kind of through audio only were canceled as well, and so it's just been an absolute disaster. So I've just been doing my best to kind of explain to you what I think is happening, and you can really see with the FIFA World Cup and the events that are unfolding that people are literally completely lost as to what is happening. Even a lot of people who thought something was weird with COVID and seeing things happening still have kind of put this on the back burner, and the general population is really living their life, in my point of view. Well, the world's largest war is literally about to explode in their faces, and they're completely oblivious of it. Now, the reason I do this, obviously, I don't even know, to be honest with you. I just feel called to do this. I enjoy doing this. And this is something where if you're listening for the first time, you're not going to get a podcast every single time. You're not going to get a podcast, once a day or once, every couple of days. This is going to be something where I talk about the events that are unfolding when big things happen. So the best thing to do to get information in regards to this podcast is theawakener.ca, the website. That's one word, theawakener.ca, for you to wrap your mind about what is happening. Now, obviously, when we started this podcast, there was a video there with Marco Rubio talking about the splintered kind of leadership of Iran, which is the leadership is fractured. And if you listen to my previous episodes, and obviously my previous episodes are the best part of this podcast because you could go back a year and I can talk about various things and you can listen to what is happening. And a lot of my predictions have been correct. And they've been correct because I understand this war or this struggle that is happening. Now, the leadership in Iran and what comes in the future is really highly dependent. And we're on phase two of this war. So phase two of this war is really pushing out the faction inside Iranian government where their hardliners are not really operating things fully. And those who are more sympathetic to the Western world and the Western world's views are the ones that are in charge. So I don't technically believe anything that has happened, like I said before, in regards to negotiations with what Trump is saying or what anything has been signed. I don't believe that Trump is actually negotiating with anybody really in government that he trusts. He's negotiating with those who are kind of the faction that has kind of come in and is more sympathetic to the Western side. And he's kind of ignoring the hardliners. As time goes on, those who are kind of sympathetic to the Western side, and I talked about this before, are going to become the majority when it comes to government. This is going to allow Trump and allow the US government to do various things which they've now proposed funding for, which includes digging up the US uranium I did say that, the US uranium. It is the US uranium inside Fordo, Iran's nuclear facilities, which I'm going to get to later. Digging up this uranium and kind of going, wow, we had no idea that Iran was in possession of a nuclear program that was so advanced. We had no idea that they had these capabilities. We had no idea that they even had this material. And this really is going to open the can of worms. The can of worms, ladies and gentlemen, was supposed to be opened before. And as I told you, it didn't happen. And it didn't happen because obviously of COVID and various things that have happened. But this time, I really think the events that are unfolding are kind of on an unstoppable path. The only way that Russia and China and the allies of Iran are really going to stop this is if they fully mobilize and have a war. Because over time, as Trump is more successful, he's going to be able to literally tell people about this conspiracy. And what people have to understand in the fundamental basis of what is happening is yes, you do if you live in the Western world. So if you live in Japan, if you live in South Korea, if you live in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, if you live in the USA or Canada, you are part of a Western world, which means you are part of a US military industrial complex. Now, this complex, which has been in control since 1945 and always had the upper hand, is faced by a polar opposite force, which is a Soviet imperialistic conspiracy which seeks to destroy it. And the key understanding of this is a conspiracy. The Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians have what's called people embedded inside us who look like normal people but are hardline communists who are the ones who are organizing and doing various things against us. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, things are unfolding. The reveal of the truth in Iran is really going to describe to people the traitors and those who are embedded in us who are actually working for our enemies. The case in point is this, right? If the government of Canada and the government of the European Union actually, it does come out that they were indeed providing U.S. uranium to Iran and to North Korea, and this was basis for obviously a war. The government of Canada, despite whatever they say, and the government of the European Union, despite what they say, are not in this for you. They are not in to protect Jews and Christians. They are mobilizing for the other side, the other viewpoint in the world, which is they are against Christians and they are against Jews. They haven't come out and openly said it because they hide in disguise. They pretend like they're doing things to benefit our society, but really their agenda over time is to lead to decay and destruction of the Western world. This will make you look back on the last 50 years and be like, wow, what really happened here was the faking of the Iron Curtain. This is the infiltration of communism. Now, there has always been communists inside the USA, Canada, and the European Union. You can go back to the 60s and you can see them, but things are much different now. Soros's organizations, his money, the collapsing of the Iron Curtain, this is basically a giant attempt for the communists to become mobilized inside the Western world and the US industrial complex, including its funding and these organizations that are set about to take complete control of our government. The communists are in complete control of our government. And they're not openly saying, hey, we just want to do away with all this and get rid of Christians and Jews, and your ideology is no longer acceptable. No, they're not trying to do that because they're facing an enemy, Western imperialists, who are not going to let this happen. So this is why things are happening so slowly and why people are going to continue to live their lives in complete oblivion of all this happening. So what do I expect is going to happen in the near future? Well, we're kind of in a waiting game, and this is kind of why I haven't done shows, 3 times a week or 2 times a week, because nothing really has changed until basically the factions, like I said before, those who are aligned with the Western world, start getting mobilized in Iran and start becoming the main kind of decision makers. And these attacks from the military in Iran for these boats in the Strait of Hormuz, or whatever the case may be, become less and less frequent. Only then are there going to be inspectors on the ground. Only then are there going to be boots on the ground to dig up what was in Iran. And we are in a game. We're just going to have to wait it out. So this kind of Trump acting like a peacemaker and saying, hey, we want peace and we have negotiations going on. This is going to continue for a long period of time. People are going to say that he's weak, but they don't understand the whole story. The whole story, it's so simple and so obvious once you go back in time. I mean, the fact that Barack Obama set up Trump as a Russian operative with his whole collusion thing was really sign of things that are going to come. If effectively the government in the Western world is exposed of being traitorous and working for our enemies and is subsequently removed, that dossier and everything that was fabricated on Trump and our opposition, like I say, their opposition, effectively is the smokescreen to label us after a war as being the instigators of this giant war, where we are in fact working with the Russians and it is not them. So Barack Obama doing this and everything that the media went with was really the setting up of things that are going to come. In eventuality, once it is exposed that the government of Canada, the European Union, the establishing government in the USA are working for our enemies, and we vote them out, Russia and China are on a path to basically oblivion. This is a much like a yin and the yang scenario. If the U.S. becomes powerful again and they start to pay off their debt, and people start going back to being normal, which means the communists are no longer in positions of power. They no longer operate kind of government positions, things of that nature. You're going to see really the Western world start to get more powerful and start to take off, and we're going to make a turn. This turn obviously brings devout consequences for Russia and China, which are going to be faced with either after their full exposure of accepting their loss, because I think this is their last fight. They're going to have to either accept that they're going to permanently be second place of all time, or they're going to go for it. And I have been saying for a long time that I believe the US has war gamed this all out. And they know in the back end that Russia and China are going to be forced to make a move because of this giant reveal that's taking so long. And this is why, obviously, Kim, the counter blackmail of Kim, the family, and everything that is happening there is really the key to what is going to happen in this war. This is such a complicated question, and realistically, this is why kind of the follower count is very low. Because once you start talking about things and you start saying, "Well, this is happening," this is a giant picture that very very few people are able to wrap their minds around. I mean, most people, to be honest with you, have an IQ probably around 90 points. Um, Critical thinking is not really their forte, and there's so many distractions happening that kind of having this question to them or posing this question to them that the Iron Curtain collapse was fake, that our government was taken over by a communist kind of system that organized against us, is really a difficult kind of question for them to answer and to see. But obviously, if you follow me and you've been a long time follower, you see it. And this is why I'm able to predict kind of events that are happening and what is going to happen and why things are happening. And obviously, when you tune in, my predictions and things that I'm saying about Trump being weak, that the media saying, "Well, Trump is weak," all of a sudden, um, is far different because I kind of understand this war. This war, ladies and gentlemen, if Hillary would have won, things would have already been finished for us. The world is much different now, and the world is a giant threat now, or is becoming a giant threat now to the Soviet ideology, the communists, which means most people now in the West, I think most people are now somewhat awake. Most people are rejecting communism. Most people are rejecting kind of this gender ideology and all this nonsense they kind of been teaching us that men are women and women are men. Most people are looking at people now and saying, wait a second. I've tried to explain to them that, it's not possible for a man to be a woman, and they're demoralized and are giving up and are just going ahead kind of being mean to them. I know, which is not really good, but it's kind of like the world is healing. And this is not good for Russia and China and where kind of we are going as as the Western world. So you can see why this giant plan to infiltrate us and turn us, um, it's really catastrophic. The truth will set you free, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone who knows in the end will know. But realistically, what is going to come out of the truth? The truth is there's going to be a giant attempt for a changing of the power structure in the world. Russia and China are going to be forced to go for it, ladies and gentlemen. And this is why everybody should be getting prepared. You should be getting food for your family and doing things accordingly, because it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before this dam breaks, and only a matter of time before people look at this podcast and go, wait a second, this guy was years and years and years ahead of his time. And this is why I just love doing this, because I see it. And hopefully, after listening to this, you guys see it as well. Anyways, take care. That's all for now.